if you can understand what I'm going to say now, and if you can't, you must just tell me because I'm not explaining it properly, then you'll actually be able to getting to the nub, to the most important thing about fibromyalgia. And this is, I'm going to explain to you how pain works. Because the problem with the pain of fibromyalgia is that your pain system starts malfunctioning. That's the key. And it's different from if you normally, if I was to whack my hand, I'd go, ow. And that's, I've got a good reason, I whacked my hand, a nerve has been stimulated, message has gone up to my brain, and I've said, oh, where was that? Ah, yes, that's just my hand, ow. Okay, so that's my process that we normally do. If I was to whack it harder and I got a big bruise, I'd say, ow, ow, and maybe say something else. And I would expect it to take longer. If I was to whack it so hard that I broke something, it would take, but it gets better. Your body can heal. Your body can break, you can break your leg in 5 places, and it gets better. The process of, this is the normal thing that everybody has with pain. We understand that where your brain, just remember the place that it all begins and ends is in your brain, where your brain gets the message from this particular wire, that's where the problem is. And you look down and it is swollen and we've got a good reason. We know that. That's instinctive. Everyone knows that. I don't have to explain it. In fibromyalgia, something different is happening. This is the key. So, to understand that, what you need to do is, here is somebody's hand. Well, take a hand. Here's a hand. Oops, like that, okay. And there is someone with fibromyalgia wakes up and says, ow, God, my hand's killing me. Okay, what has actually happened? So, there are little nerve endings in your hand. They're scattered right throughout your body. Millions and millions of them. And these nerve endings pick up a message and they go via a nerve which runs up your arm. So it loops up your arm like this. And here's the message coming along. And what we assume is that message just carries straight on up to where it all begins and ends up in your brain. And the message that reaches your brain is the same as the message that started in your hand. However, and there's always a however, isn't there? Actually what happens is that the nerve comes along and it joins into a superhighway that we've got going up and down our spinal cord. It joins into your spinal cord. And it's a bit like, just literally that, you're on a road and you're going to come into the dreaded motorway. Now, at this point, just here, is where trouble begins. So if we were now to look at this bigger, here is the nerve, here is the nerve, that message is coming from your hand like this, and in here, the nerve stops, and that happens all the way through your body. Every nerve comes along, and the nerve stops, and a new nerve starts. And at this point, the one nerve talks to another. And when one person talks to another, trouble starts. So this nerve comes along, and there are little sacs here, and they're full of what is called a transmitter, a neurotransmitter, a transmitter substance. The message hits this, and the transmitter, these little sacs empty, and the message comes across to the next nerve. And on the next nerve, there are what are called receptors. So they pick up the message and are going to transmit it along. But there isn't only one receptor. There are actually many kinds of receptors, and they can be divided into, so let me draw this again, bigger. Actually, it's fun doing that. It's better than my. So here you've got the message coming along like this, and it's like a little person running along holding a, what are those races? A relay race, holding a bat. Okay, so he's coming along, here he is, running along like that, and he's got a baton in his hand, and he's coming along, and he's coming to the next step. And at the next step, there are actually a number of doors. And there essentially are 3 doors that this person, this message, can come to these 3 doors. They're on this nerve that's going to go up to your brain. The first door, which is the biggest, is that if the message in his hand is this size, if he goes through this door, you'll have the same size message continued up to your brain. That's what we all assume. It's the same message. The second door, which is the little door here, if he goes through that door, you'll have a little. The message will shrink. Now, that's happening all the time. A lot of you may have come in with aches and pains and so on, and you sat down and thought, what the hell is he talking about? Oh, that's quite interesting. And as you start putting your attention out, what happens to your pain? It shrinks. Your pain, in fact, may not even be there. So what's happened is your brain has gone down your spinal cord and it's said, oh, I'll turn that one down, I'll turn that one down, I'll turn that one down. And it does it all the time. So you can shrink messages. This one here in the corner, I should have a bright red colour. This is the naughty one. So if it decides to go through this door, this is called the NMDA receptor. That little message can become that big. It can become amplified. The message can change. It can be amplified up to 200 times. And it can not only be amplified, it can be distorted. It can be changed. So, now what's happened is what started off as a little message saying there's nothing going on, my hand's just fine, just fine, just fine, hit your spinal cord, this receptor's turned on, and bang, there's a huge message now starting shooting up your spinal cord. And this is a bit like Chinese whispers. Did you ever play Chinese whispers? So you start off with a message here and you whisper it to somebody who thinks and passes it on, and at the end of the Chinese whispers is a completely different message. Now, the crunch is the person at the end of those Chinese whispers is your brain. And if you were to ask the person at the end, what was the message? They'd say, well, the message was that, and it'll be like, the first message may have been, there's not much happening on the Western Front and it's all pretty cool. And over here, by the time it reaches there, it says, there's a blowtorch. Someone's with a blowtorch and they're burning my hand. So, and the person at the end of that's the only message they know. They have no idea what their first message was. And your brain is the same. Your brain only knows the final message that reaches it. So you wake up in the morning and you think, ow, oh God, my hand's killing me. Is the pain real? Absolutely. Because that's how everything begins and ends in your brain. It's the final message that reaches your brain. So the pain is real, and it's as real as if if you had broken it. Is the pain severe? Absolutely. Amplify the message 200 times. You can have the most excruciating, and you all know, I mean, the pain of fibromyalgia is awful. And it can be any kind of pain, because this can distort the message. So you can have any kind of pain, and it's a bit like if I took a cattle product and I touch it up against your chest and you go, oh my God, that's sore. Oh gosh, that's sore. If I turn the prodder off, is there damage? None. But the pain, which is an electrical message, reaches your brain, is very sore. And it's the same process going on in your spinal cord. And you have all the way up that spinal cord, all the way up that superhighway, everywhere a nerve talks to another nerve, of which there are millions and millions of nerves, this can happen at any time. It can turn on and it can turn off. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that the pain of fibromyalgia, once you realize, hang on, this is actually how it works, then the pain of fibromyalgia starts making sense. Because it's your pain system which is malfunctioning. And why it's malfunctioning, that's harder, but now we recognize that it is. And the evidence, the work that's been done, you know, where one nerve, God, this thing's dying on me. Yeah, it's dying. do we have any more?
No, perhaps if you just sort of rest it, if you've been holding it up, the ink will have...
Okay, right, well I'll just have to use my hands, okay. So we're one nerve, no, that's not what I was going to say. We're,
the evidence.
Oh, the evidence, yes, great, thank you. Okay, remember where one nerve talks to another, they're little transmitters. Now the groups of transmitters, the best known is something called serotonin, which is a feel-good substance. And what we now know is that the building block for serotonin, which is tryptophan, and serotonin levels are low in people with fibromyalgia. It's done, you have to do these tests, you can't just do a blood test, it's a very sophisticated test. We also know that there's another substance, which is fascinating, it's called substance P. Has anyone met substance P before? You have, very good. Substance P was this, and this is another good example of how nutty medical research is. This was about 30 years ago. They were taking samples from creatures who they injured, and which is a horrible thing that happens in a lot of medical research. And they got this particular substance, they purified it, and it was this grey powder. Someone said, gee, I don't know what this is. So they said, well, why don't we call it substance P for substance powder? But it turned out that substance P is substance P for pain. This substance, which they purified 30 years ago and knew nothing about, turns out that if you take that and you put it on little bunny rabbits and you put it on human beings, it is the strongest pain-causing substance in the human body. It's a transmitter that is found in your periphery, it's found in huge increasing amounts in your spinal cord and all the way up into your brain, shifts around, and when the levels are high, you feel more pain. And the levels of substance P in the cerebrospinal fluid, the fluid that your brain floats around in, the level of substance P in people with fibromyalgia is 2 to 3 times higher than the general population. So previously all the blood tests that you go and you get done and everything's normal, it's because we didn't have the tools. Now as the tools get more sophisticated, you find, hang on, you're making more of this pain-causing substance, and as the substance P goes up, the transmitters, the serotonin and the feel-good substances drop. So this is the underlying true problem with fibromyalgia.